Now, the Penn State Football Tailgate Show on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and simulcast on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Now, here's Thomas Frank Carr and Landon Tengwall.
Moments like this don't come around very often. For the majority of sports fans, they live, grow, change, become adults, but very few get a championship run, an honest-to-God championship run. For example, the last time Penn State fans were truly part of the national championship discussion, I was 4 years old, and he wasn't born. Generations of fans, college football fans especially, don't get this chance. Penn State today has a chance to play in a national championship game if they win. Not guaranteed, but the title and the chance of a title is on the line. Even that is rare. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, former Penn State offensive lineman Landon Tengwall. We are here to break down Penn State and Notre Dame, their matchup in the Orange Bowl, which will decide who gets to go play the winner of Ohio State and Texas in the College Football National Championship. Landon, I have not gotten butterflies before a show in a while, but this moment isn't even the main one. But that's what it feels like. This is a big moment. How you feel?
Good. Not a lot of sleep this week, T. Frank. Man, it feels surreal that we're here. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't something that, you always have that faith that your team is going to do well, and you obviously hope for that. But, I don't even have words for it, man. I have a lot of words all about this game, but talking about what this game actually means, what this game means to the Penn State faithful, what it means to State College, what it means to James Franklin and Drew Aller and the legacy that you can leave behind. I mean, think about these players, and you can go from being just one of those teams to being one of the teams, being an 82, an 86, a 94, an 05. This team can be remembered, and I think it's really had that special feel to the feeling. Let's go through. West Virginia, there's a delay. Right at halftime, 2 hours, we're in the cramped locker room. We come out swinging, don't miss a beat. We handle West Virginia after all the talk in the offseason. Turn around, we have Bowling Green at home. We're down 10 points at home to Bowling Green. We fight back, and we're not going to let something like Northern Illinois happen.
Can I just jump in there, too, of what happened in that game? You talk about adversity. You lose your best defensive football player in KJ Winston in the first quarter. And then during that game, the headsets and communication on defense are not working. So there is a literal scramble of how do we communicate the play to the field? And everyone's like, what's wrong with the Penn State defense? And then we found that out later. Talk about adversity to start the year and the fear of what you just said of a Northern Illinois game happening to Penn State.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, you turn around, you go USC. Drew Aller has to finally have that game where he puts the team on his back. He goes out to win it. He gets it done in one of the most emotional wins, I think, of the season. You turn around Wisconsin. You go to Wisconsin. Drew Aller gets hurt in the first half. Bo Pribula has to finish off the second half, has a great game, and keeps us alive. Minnesota, the fake punt. Everything accumulated to this point, we are battle-tested. We have been in every situation that we need to be battle-tested, to go up against a Notre Dame that is so well-coached and that has, honestly, they obviously just beat Georgia, but prior to that, not a ton of huge games in the regular season. Obviously played some good teams, but man, I would have to say we're the more battle-tested team going into this game. I think it's two very well-coached teams. I think that's kind of the fun of it. And to me, T. Frank, this game is going to come down to the final play.
It's fascinating that this game between these two teams is the one that I had this whole article start written. And I want to share it with you here because it's what I was thinking about watching Notre Dame. And James Franklin said, like, these two teams are built the same from the top down. They recruit the same football players. They're in the same geographic footprint. They're part of the old school Northeastern football. I know Midwest, Northeastern, I'm being a little, taking some liberties here. But the way they play football, the schemes, the talent, the what they want to do on the field. There was this movie when I was younger. I don't know if everybody knows this. It's called Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It is a ridiculous movie. It is the beginning of the comic book movies, but it wasn't really a comic book movie. And the final boss, before the actual climax of the movie, the main character has to fight himself, a reflection of who he is. Reminds me of this game. These two teams, they both want to play the same style of defense. They both want to run the ball. They both want to stop the run. To get to the promised land, Penn State has to beat the mirror image of themselves, who has been a very hard team to beat, despite what Penn State fans might feel when it comes to the matchups with the best in college football. This game, to me, from a talent perspective, from an off-field perspective, these two teams are the same. This is not Oregon, Ohio State, where they may have more talent than Penn State. This is not a Maryland or a Minnesota. These two teams, for the first time, are on the same level. And I find that fascinating.
It is fascinating. You know what else is fascinating? We have spoken about this week, is that going back, think any big game for Penn State over the years, outside of maybe Ohio State earlier this year, when has Penn State had the better quarterback in the big game matchup? I would go as far to say the last time that happened, Kerry Collins was playing football for Penn State. And I think that is now, we don't have to overcome playing Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, whoever it is, some elite quarterback. We have that guy. We have Drew Aller, and I'm excited to see him go out and show the world what he's got. There's been a lot of questions of James Franklin, him, whoever it is on the team. And trust me, they hear all that, they feel it, and they want to answer the bell right now. And I'm excited to see him do it. Obviously, a lot of these guys are my best friends, talking to them this morning and just, kind of just telling them I love them, man. Good luck. And this is what you worked for. This is what we dreamed about when we committed here. All that type of stuff.
It's getting emotional.
I'm getting goosebumps, man. It is
crazy.
And it's not the end, man. It's not the end yet, and it is. But as a kid, like, this is the stuff you dream about when you are growing up, and you watch this on TV, and you finally get there, and you get to go to your dream school, and then you get to go. Dom DeLuca grew up, painting himself white, going into the stadium, and with his shirt off as a kid and screaming, and that meant everything to him. And now he is a captain going out there starting against Notre Dame in the college football semifinals. It doesn't get better than this. The storylines, the history between Penn State and Notre Dame, what this means to both fan bases.
Who are we turning into here? We're the X's in the O show. We're not the people that usually pontificate about the meaning of things, and yet here we are. First 7 minutes. This is a meaningful game. I'm super interested in where we go with this show.
I'll break the tension a little bit. So I got a good joke. So
okay.
Listen, I'm going to set the scene. This is how the joke goes. So the flu and food poisoning walk into a bar.
Who comes
Enjoy
out
the game.
on the other side?
Who comes out on the other side? I don't know. I've had both. I don't really know. No, we're just having fun, guys.
So you mentioned Drew Aller, and you kind of set the stage for what you think of this situation. But in these games where it is very tight and maybe the matchups are a wash, and I don't know that that's necessarily where we come down, but the talent level feels the same. It all feels very even, which is why it's basically a pick'em game at a neutral site, and somebody has to be the favorite. So Notre Dame is the favorite in this game. But when you do that, it comes down to the real basic stuff. Who's got the better quarterback? You say that Penn State has the better quarterback in this matchup. I wrote about that. I gave my examples of why at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com earlier this afternoon, because I was just thinking about things, and we're going to get into this in just a little bit in terms of what I think the narrative and the storyline of this Notre Dame offense is, and the opposite of what it is for Penn State. But I want to dig a little deeper on that. Drew Aller is the better quarterback in this matchup. Why?
Yeah, so, looking, and we're going to get in, we'll talk the key matchups in a little bit and all that good stuff, but obviously Riley Leonard, and I got to study him and just to clarify, because I've had many other fan bases come at me, I got to study Riley Leonard versus USC, versus Indiana, and versus Georgia. And really, he is a one read. If it's not there, I'm looking to take off. Now, there are times where he has made a couple passes where I say, wow, that was really impressive.
Yep.
But those are more so few and far between, I would say, than something that happens pretty often. For the most part, I would go hours of watching film without saying, they haven't thrown the ball down the field like once. I'm like, I seriously sit there and I'm like, is this Penn State's offense? Now we throw the ball down the field more than Notre Dame does.
Oh, for sure.
And so, obviously also, he has Faison, he has Bo Collins. Neither of those wide receivers are needle movers for me. I think Trey Wallace is better wide receivers than both of those guys. And, I didn't see that much out of Riley Leonard. Obviously his running ability. Now I'll talk about that. I will give him his props there.
Yeah.
He's incredibly fluid. I said it reminds me a lot of Tyler Warren of it's like they don't look that fast. You look at Tyler Warren, you're like, that guy can't be super fast, but he is. And it's the same way with Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
There was multiple times where he would just set the linebacker up and it was like, boop, bop. And it was like, oh, what happened to the linebacker? And so he is really good at setting up his runs. You will see a lot of quarterback counter.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know counter, that's two guys pulling. It's normally the guard and the tackle, the guard and the tight end. Well, Notre Dame, they will pull their guard, the second puller, their running back. And so this is something that's really interesting. It is. And so the thing that's really interesting about that is generally when you hand the ball off as a quarterback to your running back, you have 9 total blockers. The defense has 11 guys. Well, now you are making your quarterback the ball carrier and you are adding your running back into the blocking scheme. Now it is 10 versus 11. So that is something you will see throughout the game, but you're also going to see that a lot on 3rd and short and 4th and short because, hey, we just need a yard. Let's add another blocker in and go 10 versus 11 instead of 9 versus 11. So I think that is some stuff you can expect to see from Riley Leonard. Now, talking about Drew Aller, I got to talk about this on 24/7. I went on with Mark Brennan this week, and I was kind of talking about the evolution of Drew Aller. I remember his first spring practice. I'll never forget it. It wasn't even spring. We were still in Haluba Hall when we were just doing like walkthroughs. We weren't even in spring ball yet. And he came in, and Cliff was obviously still the starter for another year. And he comes in, and we're going through. So he comes in with the group 2. And he goes, ready, go. And it's like, oh, whoa, hold on. We got to fix it. Got to be a little bit louder. And from that moment to where Drew Aller is now, I am so incredibly proud as a friend, as a former teammate of his growth, of the leadership, his ability to have that fire in him, to be the guy that people look to when they need a spark. I have loved to see that growth from him. Now, can he do it in the biggest game of his life? I think we saw it against Oregon. We saw Drew Aller playing loose, and there was nothing to lose there. And then, obviously SMU was cold, but there was some mechanical stuff, and it didn't look super sure. Came back against Boise State. And I thought, there was moments where because of the blitz pickup, he looked a little unsure and didn't hit some passes in the flats that he should have. But at the same time, he threw some balls against Boise State that were otherworldly.
His ability to turn it on is starting to become a thing where maybe he doesn't start out well, maybe he starts out a little slow, but when he needs it, there are moments before the 2-minute warning, 4th quarter against USC, where it just, whatever it is, switches in his brain and he turns into an assassin with the football. And it is some of the most beautiful stuff I've seen. This is the thing. I want to see great football. I think Penn State fans want to win. I want to see things I haven't seen before. I have not seen a franchise quarterback before. Drew Aller is a franchise quarterback. It's just about how often does he pull that out? How often do you does the moment tease that out of him? And in this game, I think there's going to be opportunities for that in a lot of different situations and a lot of different variables. I want to get to that a little bit later. And I want to make sure that we get to a bunch of the other things in this matchup, the X's and O's, the things that he and I had. But we didn't get a chance to actually watch film together this time.
We didn't. We didn't. Well, I think we both watched so much film.
Oh, we did. Yeah.
I will say this. I'm generally not. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything, but I feel as though I may have watched more film this week than anybody in Penn State football's building, because it was like an unhealthy amount at that point.
Yes, yeah, because that's like you're not worried about practice schedules. You're not worried about like, do we have all the things ready to get out to Florida?
Yeah, I don't have to game plan my own game plan for that team.
You locked yourself in a room with your new laptop, which looks awesome, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And then watched all the film,
all of it,
and we're going to get into all of that. His key matchup. The thousands of hours, the 24 hours straight that he watched film, he's going to dilute all of it down into the essence of a key matchup coming up next. Now, normally this is a situation where we will transition into the Penn State practice update. Some behind-the-scenes things, we don't have one of those this week. But here's the deal. Abdul Carter wasn't at practice. Everybody else that we knew of was at practice. I want to share a quick story, though, about what happened behind the scenes thing that might be hilarious. So I had to go to practice by myself instead of having a team of us from Blue White Illustrated on Sunday. It was, some things happened because of the schedule being moved around and all these odd days. So our other reporters couldn't be there. So I handled who's there, availability, basically like doing a head count. And it's a lot because there's 125 people spread all across the Luba Hall, constantly moving. It's not like they're lining up for you to then just make sure everyone's there. So I'm taking photos and I'm taking photos and I'm taking photos and I'm taking videos and I'm trying to capture everything. So then I take all that information, I sit down at a cafe and I'm flipping through all my photos and I see with the offensive line 68. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I have a story here. I don't know how this makes any sense. I sent it to several people, including Landon. And I'm like, I was going into the details of like, he's got a shoulder brace on the left shoulder. That's exactly like his frame, his size. And I'm texting other people and they're like, maybe that's Chimdi Ono. Maybe that's somebody else. Like they're putting somebody else in a 68 jersey. And I'm like, but it's him. I've watched him move. I've seen Anthony Donko for so long. That's him. What is going on? And then I checked the file date, and there was one file from like October that somehow got into my file transfer with everything from January.
Oh.
And he was not at practice. But luckily, all of that happened in a text message and not anywhere public until this very moment. But man, I think that might be a better practice update than anything I could have produced for you to put here on 99.5 The Bus and, of course, on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. That's all to say, again, Landon's key matchup is coming up next. We'll be back on the Tailgate Show, powered by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Nate, any other thoughts here? We're coming down to the end of it. I just wanted to get some final thoughts on this game and a little bit more, squeeze a little more juice out of this orange about the matchup here. What do you think that we haven't talked about yet comes to your mind in terms of what you're curious to learn about this week from Penn State and their matchup with Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think I just am what's the word? Addicted. That's the word. To the idea of quarterback play mattering at this stage of the game. And I think if you're Penn State, you should feel really good about that.
We're right? On the same wavelength.
To me, not that Riley Leonard isn't a good football player, not that there aren't good things that Notre Dame can do in the passing game, but to me, Penn State has done and did very recently well against one-dimensional offenses. Defensively, that's a thing that they do. If they know for a while, this is what we have to do. We have to stop the run. And that's what they do anyway. That's so much of what they do is predicated on that. This, to me, shapes up fairly well for Penn State to not give up a ton of points. And if you don't give up a ton of points, you always have a chance. I'm not saying that Penn State's offense, right? I like that part of the equation to me is a wild card, has been a wild card, will continue to be a wild card. But if this is a game where Penn State's defense can prevent Notre Dame from offensively cracking 24, 27 points, yeah, you're going to be in it, right? Special teams, I think, is an under talked about part of this, right? You can't give up those backbreaking type plays. But if Penn State is able to contain the run, turn it into a little bit of a punting contest, and not get burnt by big plays in the passing game, yeah, I don't know. Front facing, when I look at the stats and when I look at the record and everything that Notre Dame has done this season, those are things that I think favor fairly well for Penn State going into this game.
It's interesting because I was all ready yesterday to write something about how Penn State is going to struggle against press man coverage and man coverage in general. And then when I looked at the information, I looked at the data, and that's not true. Now, it is true that only like 4 receivers have any receptions of any meaning whatsoever against man coverage. But the ones that do, Trey Wallace, Nick Singleton, and Tyler Warren, obviously, have all been very good against single coverage. So there might be more opportunity, more advantage for Penn State than I thought, going in and looking at the film.
Game, here's Landon Tengwall as he gives you the key matchups. Brought to you by Stalker Chevrolet. For your next vehicle purchase, come to Stalker Chevrolet and save with low interest rates. And remember, only at Stalker Chevrolet will you get the Stalker Advantage with the purchase of any new vehicle.
Welcome back into the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I am Landon Tengwall, and we are talking my key matchups of the College Football Playoff Semifinals, Orange Bowl. T. Frank, we were just talking about him. It's Drew Aller, and it's Drew Aller versus Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts. For me, Xavier Watts is the second best safety in America. We've already seen the best in Caleb Downs. Wish KJ Winston could be in that conversation, but unfortunately not. Xavier Watts is number 2. He plays that high safety in cover 1, and that means everybody's man across the board, and Xavier Watts is up high. And he is trying to sit back there as the midfielder and figure everything out, and he has elite play recognition. His ability to diagnose a play, go and hunt, and also keep contained while doing it is really, really impressive. I really enjoyed studying his tape. Now, specifically why this is my key matchup. Drew Aller is going to have to pass the ball today. There is going to be tight coverage, and especially some really nice balls along the sideline outside the number.
Yeah.
Now, why I think this is the matchup. I showed a couple videos of Gunnar Stockton for Georgia and even Indiana's quarterback and a couple other folks, even USC as well with Jordan Maeva. And they did a good job, but the biggest thing I noticed, they never looked off Xavier Watts. Now, looking someone off is, for example, saying, I know I have Tyler Warren one-on-one to my right side. So I know I'm going to go there pre-snap, no matter what, because he's my guy. I'm going to give him this ball. So when Xavier Watts is in that middle of the field, as a quarterback, I'm going to snap it and say hike, and I'm going to instantly look to my left. Even though I know for a fact I'm going to my right where Tyler Warren is, I'm looking to my left because as Xavier Watts is back there, he watches Drew Aller's eyes. And if he sees Drew's head go to the left, he is going to slowly creep over there. And then, boom, last second you turn, fire one, back to the right. That is the type of cat and mouse game I need Drew Aller to play with Xavier Watts today. Do not let him make a play on the ball. Do not let him get there in time for those breakups. It is all about Drew Aller's eyes, how we mess with them with pre-snap motion, misdirection, and freeze them just for a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think we will be able to run this ball, but Drew Aller is going to have to pass it. And when he does, to me, it's him versus Xavier Watts, Steve Frank, and I got my guy every single time.
I love that you brought that up because in the game against Boise State, the incompletion to start the third quarter, Tyler Warren down the seam, it's exactly what he was doing. The exact thing that I diagnosed this play at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com where there's one receiver over to his left running a dig route into a linebacker. Like, there's nothing over there. Pre-snap, Drew knows that. He even gives like a little bit of a body fake, gives a little bit of that, not a full like pump fake, but it makes the safety, the middle field safety, and the middle field linebacker shoot to their left. Opens up a wide hole to Tyler Warren, but the ball's a little bit high. So it is as much about the mental side of things and then the physical side of things. It's those small percentages in this game that you have to hit those passes, you have to catch those passes, and you have to make sure that all that hard work you just put in to get your best player wide open in a game where a team is keying on him on every single play. When you have those opportunities, you got to take them. Something that I wrote about at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com this week as well, and I'm just going to keep saying that because, that's where I've been thinking about, and that's where all my thoughts have been. You can join us for $1, by the way, and you can subscribe for a week to get all this information. And right now, it's $1, so, like, if they lose tonight, I'm not trying to jinx anybody, but you paid $1 to get access, and then you can decide whether you want to join us for the offseason, or you join us, and then the national championship game happens, you get all this week of crazy for $1. I had an epiphany this week, Landon, because there's a certain part about not being in football, in the building, where you lived for 3-4 years plus, and of course your entire life in terms of being in football, that we forget and we get the luxury of living in the absolution of watching it happen live, that I don't even know. I as an offensive player, you might not even appreciate this the same way too, of the defense doesn't know what's coming. The defense doesn't know if it's run or pass.
I always thought that. I would always think about that, and I was like, if I played defensive line, I would hate that.
Yeah.
I would hate that, like, I'm going to strike this offensive lineman, and I have no clue if it's a run or a pass. So, you're right. I have thought about that many times. I'm so glad I was an offensive player all my life.
There are two calls on every single play. There is the coverage call, and there's the front. But both deal with the other, right? So coverage deals with the run game, and fronts have to account for passing. And so that fact alone, when I was watching Notre Dame, a team that, as you mentioned, plays single high safety, they are very consistent. They are, in terms of scheme, they're the apex of doing one thing. They're singular. And I think it was that it sent me down this road of like, okay, so how's Penn State going to play against cover one? Because they played about 50% of the time. It's what Drew Allen is going to see tonight, most likely. And then I went into the history of Penn State playing cover one, because they have not been good against single coverage, especially in the passing game. And I noticed this year that in 2023, with Mike Yurcich's final year at Penn State number one coverage they saw was cover one. Load the box, stop the run, force the receivers outside to beat you. That was the game plan. This year it's third, and nothing's really changed other than the offense. And I thought for half a second, why are they seeing less cover one? I mean, you can clamp down everybody. Tyler Warren is like only part of the answer, and it finally hit me. If you play against Andy Kotelnicki and you play man coverage, he can basically move your defense wherever he wants it to run the football. And so this year, Penn State has seen so much less cover one this year because they are elite at generating explosive plays on the ground. So I guess, Landon, the transition I want to have here to ask you this question of like the implications and the applications of this is, would you prefer as a left guard to block a corner or a defensive tackle?
I'll go with the cornerback.
You want to get that? You want to get that easy pancake, right?
It's almost like you start laughing as an offensive lineman when you like line up a cornerback and he's like 175 pounds.
Do you feel bad? I swear I see linemen pull up a little bit sometimes.
Generally, like you kind of do, but it's so fun. Like once you get your hands on them, and it's like the situation, like it's like Michael Orr on The Blind Side, where he's just like taking you and he's like chopping at the arms, and he's like, "Get off me!" and you just can't stop. And I've genuinely started to laugh at times. Shout out Hawk. I would do that to him on the D-line too. Shout out Aeneas Hawkins, man. No, but yes.
Careful, he's a money man now.
He is. He's making reports. If you see, agents and NIL deals getting reported, you'll see Aeneas Hawkins. Shout out doing his thing, former host last year of the show. Yeah, man, no, I definitely love myself a little safety cornerback. And I will say those are, and I'm getting slightly off topic here, but those are the most hated positions by the offensive line. Is the safeties and the DBs just in general. They love to talk a lot, so it's like, okay, let's talk. Come here,
right.
Come here. We're 320. Come here. Yeah, and they're like, no, that's okay. That's okay. I'll try to dodge you. I'll try to move out of the way.
Listen, it's a different weight class. I'm used to chirping out here with the other featherweights, but that's what I'm talking about. When Andy Kotelnicki, two things, and I want to come back to you on run game leverage, because I think that's a big part of this too. But so take Nick Singleton's touchdown run to end the game against Boise State, where they hit that big play. What happened was that they had an unbalanced formation to one side, and this is the secret sauce. Unbalanced formations, shifts, motions. It's not just about making the defense think too much and make mental errors. It's also about where are your support players. So on that play, you'll watch, if you go see the highlight, Trey Wallace is in motion at the snap behind the quarterback, meaning to the field, the long side, where the play goes, there are no other players. The defensive end is the final player for the defense on that side of the field. And then Penn State pulls two players this way with motion coming this way. And suddenly the middle field safety, Xavier Watson in this situation, has to make a choice. Is he going to slow play the run, or is he going to scream outside, predict that the ball's going to bounce outside, and try and make the tackle? Suddenly he's outside, Nick Singleton breaks inside, it's a touchdown. You've created an environment if you play man coverage where Andy Kotelnicki can tell your safeties where to go. Now, that is still true. That is still an ability in this offense to do that against zone coverages. Penn State's seen a lot of quarters because it's a little more malleable for the defensive coordinator. But when it comes to leverages, and explain what that means for an offensive lineman, how much easier does it make your job when you have the leverage on your block?
Yeah, so well, first off, I just want to be clear, to give you guys that visual. Obviously, T. Frank talking about that play, but just to give you another play, if you were thinking about, I don't mean to go negative here, but when Ohio State kept hitting us outside with those speed option pitches, and you're like, where is everybody? There's no one out there with contain. That was the same thing. Ohio State went basically 4 people to one side on the left, and all we had was our DN, and they just went speed option right at him and pitched it out. So that is basically what T. Frank is talking about when it's isolating the whole one side of the field and saying, okay, now let's go right at it. We took everybody away from it, and then we're going to go there. Now, talking about blocking leverage, like you said, it makes your life a whole lot easier when you have, like you said, they're lined up where you want them, where the dominoes are lined up where you want them, and you can go knock them down. And, I think Kotelnicki has done a great job doing that all year. Now, also watching, talking about scheme, pre-snap motion, unbalanced, that type of thing. Good thing that Georgia did against Notre Dame. They had a couple big plays where they got them. And 2 big pieces of that is I was talking about Xavier Watts and his eyes. We will also see Schuler, the number 8, the other safety. He will play that deep safety sometimes. And he does not have the play recognition that Xavier Watts has. He will get got a couple times. So that touchdown out of the backfield, if you remember, Georgia basically ran the wheel route. And it was like a crisscross because they pulled the offensive lineman to the right. They pulled that wide receivers coming in jet motion to the right. And then the running back comes across from them, basically makes a double X, and then slips out of the backfield. And when you're a linebacker looking at all of that crisscross, you're going, what? And then boom, right past you. Because you don't have a second to hesitate. That's the whole idea.
And they're fast.
You're not exactly, and you're not going to freeze someone for 2 seconds. It's all about freezing for half a second and making that defensive player's mind work just a little bit and say, if he does not fully trust his keys, you can expose that. So that's what I'm excited to see from Kotelnicki today. Can he scheme that up? Georgia's biggest run, 28 yards against Notre Dame. Guess what happened on that play? It was a pitch play to the left. They pulled 2 offensive linemen to the left, so he had lead blockers. They also had 2 guys, the tight end and a wide receiver, coming on an orbit motion.
That broke my brain.
It was 2 and 2. They ran double X's, and the Notre Dame linebacker, number 34, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he was frozen in his tracks, and it took him I talk about it doesn't normally happen for a second and a half, 2 seconds. He was frozen for about 2 seconds.
I'll be honest, when I got to that play, I'm like, I'm just going to skip this one.
It was a lot.
I was like, I could sit here and I could think it through, or I could say, hey, this is hard, and Georgia did something that's unique, and and it got them.
Absolutely, but there is something to be said for those big plays that Georgia had against Notre Dame, and they also had a big drop. Obviously, if you were watching, they had because there was a miscommunication on Notre Dame's defense.
Did you notice? Sorry, not to cut you off. Did you notice that because of that drop that by 86, I think it was.
Yeah, it was 86. Yeah.
Did you feel like they went to more zone in the second half because they kept dropping coverages?
It feel like they did. I don't know why there was the miscommunication, but they were bringing guys and they were basically motion snapping guys to one side, and the cornerbacks they were just all 2 of them were going with one guy. And what was funny enough is, on that play that he dropped it, 2 of the Notre Dame cornerbacks went with the motion wide receiver, and then Xavier Watts was in that deep middle field, so it wasn't necessarily his fault, but the wide receiver was wide open on the post route, and Xavier Watts still went over to add on to triple coverage, and this guy's wide open on a post, hits him in the hands, drops it, and he's probably still feeling that one walking around Georgia's campus. But yes.
Good thing he doesn't wear 86 all the time, right?
Exactly. But to wrap that all up in a pretty little bow, Andy Kotelnicki needs to come out and coach the game of his life. And let's not even just talk about pre-snap motions, all that stuff. Put that aside. I need him to be a quarterback-friendly coach. I need him to start out and have a couple passes that say, hey, these are going to get our guys open. I am going to get Drew Aller in rhythm and get that confidence built for the rest of the game. And whether that's with Trey Wallace, whether that's with Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton in the passing game, I need Drew Aller to start early and often.
I think that they've tried to do that in the 2 previous games as well. James Franklin talked about we're not here to play we're here to play to win, essentially. Like, we're not going to look back on this and wish we had been more aggressive. And it has led to a fast start against Boise State and a bit of an uneven start against SMU. But, this one's in Florida, not in a dome. We don't get dome Drew, but we do get warm weather Drew, which we're going to see how that goes for Drew Aller tonight. So I guess there's 2 things here that I want to end the segment with, because I've been dying to talk to you about this stuff, honestly.
I like it. You guys get to just experience me and T. Frank. We're good friends.
Yeah.
We send a lot of texts throughout the week, so you get to this is kind of 2 buddies talking ball that know way too much and have watched way too much film on this team. Continue, T. Frank.
So, like I said against Boise State, what is the thing that we haven't anticipated, or what is the adjustment that isn't there? And for Boise State, they started out the game, they didn't have one, and that's why they gave up some big plays. I almost said big-ass plays. They gave up some big-ass plays. In this game, my concern, because I'm fairly confident Penn State can get some big plays in this game, but if Notre Dame pivots and plays more zone, I think that levels the playing field. So, do you think that Penn State is going to are you confident that Penn State has the advantage from the schematic thing that we just broke down of why it's so dangerous to play man coverages against Andy Kotelnicki? Do you think they're going to stick to their guns, or do you think we're going to see them pivot to something else?
I think they're going to mix it up just a little bit at least. And, so Notre Dame runs cover 1 more than anybody in college football. They are in love with cover 1 because that's how their defense was built. When you have Xavier Watts, like I said, to be that midfielder, it's a great life to live in.
Yeah.
When you are playing someone like Drew Aller, who has some really great ball placement, and you don't necessarily want to leave Trey Wallace or Tyler Warren one-on-one, and we have talked about, I'm sure you talked about over on your guys' stuff, is that Trey Wallace is actually really good versus man coverage, specifically cover 1.
Yep.
Very successful. He's actually not that great against zone, but finds a ton of success versus cover 1.
Aren't these things weird when you find them? Like, it's the opposite of what you thought, and then suddenly you're like, oh man.
Yeah, and also because that was T. Frank. He brought that up to me, and I don't know. I'll just restate them now because it's on the top of it's been in my head. Trey Wallace has had 21 balls thrown at him in man coverage. 17 of them he has caught. That is 80%, and he has just been electric at being able. And let's talk about it. Obviously, I think that interception against Ohio State in the end zone put a bad taste in people's mouth.
Yep.
Do you remember the play right before that interception?
Oh, that was a great play.
It was basically not really a jump ball, but he laid it out. Drew Aller, and this is a play similar that we're going to see. Caleb Downs, they were in cover 1.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Downs came over the top, and whatever cornerback was on him was trailing a little bit, and Drew Aller put it right there. And Trey went, got it, dove down. We were down by the 1 yard line. Obviously, Let's just run it in now.
Of course.
But I feel like every time we target Trey Wallace in these games, good things happen. Mm-hmm. How many times, look, just ask yourself this question. How many times has there been an in route, a slant route, a deep in route?
Yep.
And Trey Wallace, deep dig, and Trey Wallace just catches it. And it's a laser from Drew Aller.
Yep.
And it's like you don't really necessarily appreciate those plays, but he just catches them.
Yep.
And that is the type of plays we're going to need from him tonight. I think there is going to be a bit of bracketing on Tyler Warren. We're going to have some other folks step up. Nick Singleton has had a lot of success in the receiving game this year. Kotelnicki has really started to get him more involved. Big fan of Luke Reynolds, the future of the aces, the tight ends here at Penn State. I think he could have an impact in tonight's game. Oh, T. Frank, I don't even know, dude. I'm so excited.
Well,
I'm so excited.
We got to talk about the other side of the ball. We got to talk about the Penn State defense and how they're going to contain Riley Leonard, and we're going to got to talk about the Notre Dame offensive line. I love the work you did this week. I actually people kept asking me. I'm like, just go watch Landon's channel. Yeah, I agree with everything he said, and he said it really well. So just go watch his stuff, and that'll be what we talk about with the offensive line. But all that breakdown coming up next. And, of course, right now it is the coach's corner to hear what James Franklin has to say about Penn State and Notre Dame. And, no, we're not talking about everyone needing to be in a conference. We're not going to be talking about schedule evenness or the college football. All that stuff is real. All that stuff is valid to have a conversation about. But we're going to talk about football here on the Tailgate Show. That's next.
Press conferences are boring, right? That's why we've set aside the most important stuff for you. It's Coach's Corner, powered by Bobby Rahal Honda on West College Avenue, State College. Online at BobbyRahalHondaofStateCollege.com.
The Orange Bowl has arrived. Penn State finds themselves in sunny Miami Gardens, getting set to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for a spot in the college football championship game. The Nittany Lions find themselves here after a 31-14 victory over Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. The Broncos have a star running back in Ashton Genty, but Penn State has two. Nick Singleton, who ran one in from 58 yards out, and Katron Allen, who James gave quite a bit of praise.
I know there was a ton of conversations about Mr. Genty, and deservedly so, from Boise. He'd earned that type of conversation, but I'd make the argument we got the best duo in all of college football. I think obviously we're about to play a team that's got some good backs too, but again, we're a part of that conversation. Katron is just so physical. He's just so physical, and he wears people down, able to run you over, keep his feet, extend runs.
Penn State's Orange Bowl opponent is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Head coach Marcus Freeman's team got here after beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl 23-10. The South Bend, Indiana squad may wear different colors than PSU, but Coach Franklin sees quite a few similarities between the two.
I think in a lot of ways they're built similar to us. You look at their turnover ratio numbers, you look at their explosive play defense in terms of defending and limiting explosive plays. You look at the middle eight, they're built in a lot of ways that I think we are in terms of emphasizing the statistics that matter. And they do a great job of not beating themselves, which I think is a really important thing in college football. It starts with that.
Star defensive end Abdul Carter found himself knocked out of a big chunk of the Fiesta Bowl victory last week. Many keen-eyed observers noticed true freshman Max Granville filled in for Carter on many different snaps. The true freshman has one pretty big admirer in 2024 and 2025, James Franklin.
In our third down package, to your point, he backs up Abdul. So when we lost Abdul, he's the next guy in that role. And I think it speaks a lot about our excitement about Max. Max, if you looked at him, from a recruiting standpoint, was highly, highly productive as like a 3-4 outside linebacker, dropping, intercepting, rushing the passer, doing a ton of different things. And to me, we have thrived with those types of guys. You look at Chop, right? You look at Micah Parsons.
107,000 fans packed out Beaver Stadium against SMU. Another 60 grand invaded Glendale against Boise State. Coach Franklin expects the crowd in Florida to be just as big and has one request for them. Wear white.
Our fans have been great. Our fans are special. We recognize that, and we're expecting a huge crowd in Miami. I challenge everybody to wear white and white out energy. We want that place rocking. Probably more hoodies than t-shirts from what I've heard on the weather report. But we need that place rocking, and we appreciate the support that we always get.
That was your Penn State Coaches Corner. More from the Tailgate Show in a moment.
Of Lewistown, we believe in being more than.
What do you think specifically of Penn State's strength running the football against that kind of polarizing view, I guess, in Larry's mind about the Notre Dame run defense?
Yeah, I think they've got a shot. I mean, I don't think it's a shut them down type defense. I mean, you look at the schedule, and Notre Dame, after they lost to Northern Illinois, by the tangent here, the Northern Illinois loss does not matter at all. Like, it is not an issue. Like, it is not a factor in this game. It is not an issue. It is not something that we need to talk about because it does not matter. The Tomlin is, we do not care. Like, that is a different team right now. They have responded in kind. They've done a great job. They turned it around. I think they ransacked Purdue the following week. So like they put that one behind them, and it's a credit to the way that they were able to do that. You look at their schedule going down the line, there's a lot of leads there. There's a lot of, that's a big win over Stanford, big win over Navy, which we thought was going to be a big game, thought Army was going to be a big game, turned into a rout. So Virginia, like these, you're not going to get run on when you're up 28-3 or whatever it is. So I think that plays into it, and Penn State's had some of that as well. So that goes into it a little bit. But yeah, there are cracks there. There are abilities for teams to open it up. Fascinating to me that USC had their best two running games against Power 4 competition against Penn State and Notre Dame. I think that is wild when you think about the offense that they had, the offense that they were trying to have, and the weapons that they have on the outside. And it's the running game that got it done for both of them. So it's kind of crazy to think, and I actually have to dig into that Notre Dame USC game because
Same.
it got crazy there at the end. But no, USC being able to run is not insignificant because Penn State saw it as well. So I think that, you have an opportunity to play it like that. Katron has played as well as any back in the college football playoff. Scatabo was fantastic for Arizona State, but that was, it was one game. So Katron has done some really good things to turn his, it's so stupid to say this, but turn his career around. You look at the season that he had and the playoff that he had and the end of the season with the Big Ten championship that he had. And he seems to be a different player. He seems to be like a completely different motivation there. And he's running angry. He's running awesome. He's, I think Drew said he's looking for somebody to plant in the ground. Like that's the way that he's running. So when you have that and you have a scheme that has been pretty successful, you're going to have opportunities. And I think they will be able to run. Again, what did I say last week? You pass to score, you run to win. And I think Penn State has that ability to do so, especially when you look at the two sets of backs and fantastic sets of backs on each side. But Jeremiah Love's pretty beat up right now. And if you saw the video out of the Notre Dame practice, he's not moving all that well. They can still find ways around it. They've got a better quarterback running game than Penn State, but you've got a lot of things going for you for Penn State. And if they're able to move some guys out of the way, and it's not a huge defensive line, especially without Riley Mills in the middle there, you've got an opportunity.
Celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community, Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home of the $1,000 lowest price guarantee with 20 locations throughout Pennsylvania. I'm Thomas Carr, Penn State lineman Landon Tengwall. We're here to talk about the game. If you haven't noticed it, if you're new here, because there's a lot of people here on the Tailgate show at 5 o'clock, I have a feeling that people are watching in their commute home at this point, Landon, because it's a Thursday and we're doing this, and this is just like all of this is crazy. All of these things, the playoff, the format, the things that we haven't been a part of as the Penn State ecosystem is just all new and weird. And this game being on a Thursday is just, I'm not used to working football games on a Thursday. I'm not a pro guy.
See, it doesn't feel like a Thursday to me. It felt like a Saturday all day. And I go in and then I'm coming over here. I stop at Sheets, and shout out to whoever it was at Sheets. I got a free coffee there, right? I just became a coffee guy recently. Shout out to Cheese Shop downtown, Bill, forever a legend. And I look, and there is a school bus. And what is it about this time? 4:10.
Mm-hmm.
Game starts about 3 hours later. Imagine you're a Penn State kid, and you are going semifinals. You're going to go home. Your parents say you get to stay up late on a Thursday.
Oh yeah.
And then your school bus gets in an accident and you have to sit there. They might still be out there.
Oh,
yeah, it was like a decent accident. The bus was fine because it was a bus, but this car was destroyed. There was like police all at the intersection. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, those poor kids.
Yeah.
But, they'll get home. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
And they'll get to watch the game.
Hopefully everybody's mom was able to pick them up at Sheets or something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Nothing like your mom. Nothing like, did you ever fake a sickness?
Yeah.
To get picked up by your mom?
Oh, no. I faked a sickness. So my mom was a teacher.
Oh, okay.
And so like that was never going to happen.
Gotcha.
So I had to fake before school. I got a GameCube. And then I suddenly was sick, and my sister, who's a good bit older than I am, she was home from college or something like that around Christmas, and I'm sitting there in my underwear eating ramen noodles and playing GameCube, and she's like, you don't have to pretend to be sick around me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because like I just had to continue the lie, even though I was eating a full bowl of ramen noodle. Like obviously I wasn't sick.
Yeah, we do actually. Shout out my guy in the comment section. We do have to talk about this. Let's talk about it for a second. Notre Dame, Penn State, my recruitment. I don't mean to make this about myself, but this is.
I wanted to start with this because that's the whole thing. Is these two teams recruit the same players? It's you go to any of the recruiting sites. We talk about these players, and it's always here are the top schools: Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan. Maybe you'll throw in some other regional schools, and then if a guy gets the top of the top, then you like Ohio, Georgia, they're all in. But yeah, this is the thing. These guys have been competing against each other for years. It's just the first time they're going to play football on it. So, sorry, go for it.
No. I mean, I don't even know where I have so many stories. Didn't like Brian Kelly. I'll just throw that out there. One of the reasons why I didn't go to Notre Dame.
He doesn't seem likable. How does he? I don't get that.
No, not likable at all. I don't think the Notre Dame fans like him either. I've seen some screenshots sent around of me, Blake Fisher, who's now actually starting at right tackle for the Texans. We'll see him this weekend. And then Rocco Spindler, who's starting at right guard, who actually is someone we can talk about for a minute. Incredibly injured his right ankle has a moon boot on it.
That's
Rocco
what
Spindler.
I wanted to talk about this
And
segment.
he is so clearly injured. And there's some plays against Georgia where he gets jacked up, like badly. And it's not because Rocco Spindler is one of the only veteran offensive linemen. 3 of their 5 offensive linemen are first-year starters. But Rocco Spindler might as well be a first-year starter with how hurt his ankle is.
Yeah.
Zane Durant, angry, versus a hurt Rocco Spindler. Let's get after it, Frank. I'm loving it. I will tell this. I'll go one story. Well, number one, Jeff Quinn was the offensive line coach when he was recruiting me. That's the guy he developed. Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, some legendary guys. And I remember calling him, telling him I'm going to commit to Penn State. And he tells me, he makes it really, really difficult. And he's like, no, this can't be. Gets Quentin Nelson to call me an hour later to tell me how great Notre Dame is, what it did for him and his family. I'm like, look, dude, it's an honor to talk to you. I don't really care, though. I'm going to Penn State. And that was it. My other favorite story, and producer Kyle will probably appreciate this one. I go to Notre Dame, and out of nowhere, and obviously very Catholic school, one of the moms of just one of the students that goes there made this big stink that the girls were wearing leggings, and that is not very Catholic of these girls. So when I go to the school, there is a leggings protest when I'm on my one Notre Dame visit. So every single girl at the school was wearing leggings. So yeah, it was a good day. Anyways, that was like the most memorable part of my trip to Notre Dame, a leggings protest by the women of Notre Dame. So shout out Notre Dame for that one. It was a good visit. And then the last thing, I go to
that was probably the thing that got you closest to committing.
Right. My last story, I go to DM my friend Chris Buchanani on Twitter here, and I type in BUCH on Twitter. And what comes up is Tyler Buckner, who's actually a current player on Notre Dame. He went from Notre Dame to Alabama back to Notre Dame. And he was like the star quarterback of that 21 class. Mm-hmm. And I see, and there's like 3 3-leaf clovers. And I see Tyler Buckner. And I'm like, I click on the group chat. And it is a recruiting group chat that Blake Fisher and Tyler Buckner made to recruit everybody back in 2019. It was the 21 class. It was like me, Lorenzo Styles. I mean, we got guys that are in the league now in it. Bo Collins was in it, who ended up going to Clemson, now at Notre Dame. We had Donovan Edwards, a bunch of really cool names. So I thought it was, and I was looking through it. We all said we were going to commit. It was like, oh, we're going to be great. Blah, blah. And it would have been the greatest recruiting class ever if everybody in this group chat were to have committed. Only about a quarter of them probably did. But great memories nonetheless, man. Obviously, like I said, these were my final 2 teams. Yeah. They are incredibly close. I had the honor of putting together I don't even know what to call it, but it was Penn State versus Notre Dame. I called it a rivalry renewed. I got to talk to a bunch of the players from the last time Penn State and Notre Dame faced off, 2007, the first ever Beaver Stadium full whiteout that there was. I had Guido D'Elia, the creator of the Penn State whiteout, on. We had talked to Derek Williams. We talked to Deion Butler, AQ Shipley, who's a very current guest on Pat McAfee, Spider Caldwell, of course. Great stories. And I got to learn about what Penn State versus Notre Dame means to Penn Staters that are older than me, not born in 2002, and I don't know anything about this rivalry, but they got to tell me what this matchup really meant, what it meant to Joe Paterno. It was such a big. I even got to have a couple Notre Dame guys on. I had some former Notre Dame players from the 80s on. It was really cool to just get to kind of hear from people that were in this game of what it meant to them. And even when I was talking to Derek Williams and I was talking to Deion Butler, it was funny. They even said, we didn't really realize when we were in it what this matchup meant. But now looking back, 18 years later, he's like, us being a part of that home series against Notre Dame was one of the coolest things of our life. We didn't realize while we were in it. But he told stories about, Joe in the hotel the night before, telling them kind of what it meant. Spider Caldwell told a great story about Joe kept getting asked, what does it mean to be here in South Bend? And this was in 2006. What does it mean to be here in South Bend? Great tradition, legacy. And Joe gives, politically correct answer, blah, blah, blah. They get to the hotel. He asked the same thing. Joe, what does it mean to be here in Notre Dame? All this great tradition. Oh, it's great. Great stuff, blah, blah, blah. Finally, he gets asked again. And then they're at snack the night before the game. And Joe says, bring it up. And he says to everybody, I'm tired of hearing about their tradition and the great players they had and all the great games they played in. We have great tradition. We have great players. And we're going to go out there And I don't know. I'm getting chills talking about it. Spider Call was a much better storyteller than I am. But it was just getting to hear that of what that meant to those guys was one of the coolest things, coolest experiences. So if you get some time, if you want to chill after this show, you have an hour and a half till kickoff.
Yeah.
If you do not want to consume any more pregame content, go watch that on my channel at Behind the Wall with Landon Tengwall on YouTube. You can hear from Penn State legends, like I said, like D. Will, Deion Butler, AQ Shipley, all those guys. I barely slept in my studio. Got about 7 to 8 interviews done. One of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. My favorite piece of content I've ever made. So would greatly appreciate you guys checking that out.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you, T.
You
Frank,
have
man.
nailed the promo. But that was just like an epic dismount. I was just gonna be like, hey, by the way, if people want to go watch it, you didn't even need me. That was just excellent. That was excellent. This game can be one of those in that timeline too, because of everything we set up of, the quarterbacks, the similarities, how well they have played this year, and all the way down to, by the way, no one believes in either of these schedules. In terms of the who they've played, there are questions about that. But let's talk about what's on the field, like the things that we've seen with the Penn State defense. And you brought it up a little bit there with the offensive line. I'm fairly certain Penn State has a distinct advantage in the trenches here because of, the youth and the injury that you were talking about. Do you agree with that, or do you think that this unit is going to play above those, I don't even call them limitations, but realities about their situation right now?
Well, I mean, honestly, on both sides, Penn State has the advantage up front, and that's a big piece of that is because of Notre Dame's injuries. I think if they have 0 injuries, we're almost dead even. But talking about their offensive line, they have some pieces. Their left tackle, he's a freshman All-American because he's played so well, and his technique is honestly really great. But he's undersized, and he's still a freshman. And he has some things with his technique that can be exposed. If you've been watching my stuff, he loves to drop that back foot, give a soft edge to the quarterback, all that type of stuff. I would love that matchup versus Amin Vanover, and obviously a little bit of Abdul Carter too, maybe.
Yeah.
But Amin Vanover is someone I'm really excited to see also go against him. They at times got strike by the defensive tackles of Georgia, and both guards are a yard and a half in the backfield. So for me, Zane Durant, Devon J. Thomas, Keziah Izzard, it's on you guys. If you can once again control this game, because they did, the defensive MVPs of that game, of course, Zakee Wheatley deserves his credit. 2 turnovers, had a fantastic game. Amin Vanover, I think, could have been co-defensive MVP. You watch the tape. After I turned off that final play of Penn State defense versus Boise State, once again, love Zakee Wheatley, so impactful. I think Amin Vanover could have very easily been that defensive MVP.
Especially having to be thrust into that moment as a guy who has to play that position full-time and not as a rotational player. Just the athleticism he showed. There was one play where I think he fell over on the read option and tackled the quarterback for a 3-yard gain. Like, we don't talk enough about the athleticism that Amin Vanover has in terms of he's a little different, obviously, than some of Penn State's speed rushers that they've had, the Abdul Carter body type, the 3-4 outside linebacker, but he's athletic. That's a dude that can make plays. And the question I have, because even in that game against Boise State, with the effort they were playing, the intensity in which they were getting into the backfield, it did feel like there were a couple of times in the third quarter, maybe even a little bit in the fourth quarter before the game was fully away, that it looked like they were getting a little tired because there's only 3 of them up there at defensive tackle specifically. And now you're down to 3 defensive linemen. If this team continues to play, I feel like they'll go as far as those guys, their legs can carry this defense. Do you think that they're able to get enough 3 and outs and force Notre Dame into some no-win situations on 3rd and long to save their legs for that fourth quarter so they're not on the field for 10-play drives? Because I think if there's one kill switch, it might be that in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the goal on every drive, but for me, you have to keep them behind the sticks. Behind the sticks means that keep them in 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Do not let them play in a world that is 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2. That is where Notre Dame thrives, and that is where, and honestly, I think who controls the ball for longer in this game? There's a couple things that will dictate it, but I think that could be very much dictate who wins this game, who has the ball for longer, who can grind it out on the ground, because let's also talk about this, D. Frank. These are two really good defenses, and Penn State here just finished up against Boise State, the worst tackling team pretty much in all of college football.
Yeah,
they were dead last in the FBS in missed tackle rate. Now we're coming against Notre Dame, a top 10 team in missed tackle rate.
Yeah,
it's not going to be given.
They're not going to give it to you.
It's not going to be given to Penn State. There is not a 2-3 tackle, broken tackle minimum on every single play.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame tackles incredibly well. They fly to the flats, they keep contained, and then they wait for their other 10 guys to come and help make a play. So this is going to be something where Penn State has to go and take it. It is not going to be gifted to them. I'm excited to see. I mean, these guys, like I said, I can't even describe, I'm sure, what's going through their minds sitting there. This is one of those things where you're sitting in the locker with your headphones on. You're not even talking to anybody. And it just feels like one of those special moments that you're going to forever remember. Now, is it going to be something good or something bad? But
you got to feel the hype, but not let the hype feel you.
Just let's talk about it. Kickoff is in 2 hours. So I would say the guys are pretty much arriving to Hard Rock probably right about now.
Mm-hmm.
That has been actually a conversation for a while that we played with, actually, with Coach Franklin. We went from arriving about an hour and a half directly to also 2 hours before. So it was something where Franklin was like, hey, do you guys like to be in the locker room for a while and get to like chill? Or do you want to go in, get taped, get ready, and just go out?
Right.
I was a fan of getting to kind of get in the environment a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where they're at right now, but they are getting ready. You're pulling
Are they in the home locker room there? So it's the Miami Dolphin Stadium.
So
okay.
I don't think, because I mean, we're wearing white anyway, right? Yeah. So
but they're the home team. Because they're the higher seeded team.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the thing I'm curious about.
I don't know the answer to that.
Because I guess I don't know the quality. What I'm thinking of is in the situations that you're normally in a college locker room, the away locker room is not nice. But in an NFL stadium, it might be like, oh yeah, like I'll go 3 hours early because like we're gonna sit in these super dope lockers. And so that's kind of playing through my head.
The away locker rooms still are not that nice in the NFL, though. So it is kind of interesting.
It's not the LSU locker room.
No, definitely not. I'll tell you, the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl locker room was huge. That was fun to just kind of be in there, and you could move around. Yeah, so I don't know that situation, but just kind of talking about where the players are at right now. You're walking in, headphones on, listening to your favorite music. What are you listening to, T. Frank? You're walking into Beaver Stadium to play in the semifinal national championship. Hello. What are you turning on?
I have been obsessed with the new Linkin Park album. So Linkin Park was my band growing up as a kid.
Okay.
And so they just got a new lead singer, and it has, to my bones, it makes me like get into that. I played football for 6 months my senior year of high school, but I know the feeling of when it gets you. You know, that side of you that doesn't actually come out all that often, and you've got to like summon that every time you play football. So I'm listening to the new Linkin Park.
I love it.
There was a point where I was listening to it at the gym the other day, and like I started shaking physically. So you shouldn't have asked me that question because nobody cares. But you should check it out.
Were you deadlifting?
Yeah, that was a deadlift.
It was a deadlift day. You got to get that hyped up to deadlift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll add my end. I'll probably go Drake Forever. Mm-hmm. You know that one? Last name. Wait.
Yeah.
Last name after. No, I'm trying to get help from our producer over here. First name, like a sprained ankle, boy, ain't nothing to play with. No? All right. We'll move on.
Sorry.
We'll move on. I didn't even know it all the way, but the guys are getting ready.
Unfortunately, I am the whitest person you know. There's just no way around it. I can't hide it. I've tried. Like I try to be cool in my own way, but I am just the whitest. So I apologize.
Last name ever, first name greatest. There it is. Sorry about that.
I mean, I've been around. I've heard that on commercials before, right?
Of course.
Everyone loves that song.
Well, yeah. All right, let's get back into this game, though, man.
Let's talk about Abdul Carter.
Oh,
I mean, we got an hour and we haven't really dug into that particular situation because I think first off, everyone's aware of it and we don't have an update. James Franklin mentioned there's no availability reports. They're not going to be putting one out. Most likely because he left it up in the air. Well, if Notre Dame does, then we will, and blah, blah, blah. And that's just not going to happen. That when there's an option, the answer is no. So we'll find out as they're warming up, right? I guess what's your expectation? What do you?
Yeah,
you got something over there.
Oh, I do. I put out a tweet about this.
Okay.
And his agent was it Drew Rosenhaus?
Rosenhaus, yeah.
Rosenhaus. He basically confirmed this on the Pat McAfee show that he was going to play, and I said this before he even came out. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. no matter what, if you get taken out of a game and you do not go back in and it's a shoulder injury, there is no world where you should be playing 7-8 days later. There's no injury that is then healed by 7 or 8 days. If I had to guess, he probably, like I said, this is complete. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but it's something that is going to take some time to heal. He is going to play anyways. You will see him in a shoulder harness that we've seen Tony Rojas in. I wore. You saw it on me. Everybody. He is going to be hurting a little bit. Also, a good friend of the show, Toradol, the Toradol shot that you get injected with.
I've never had the pleasure, but I'm well aware.
Yeah, well, you feel good in warm-ups. Let's just say that, and then it doesn't hurt the rest of the day. So all of that is going on for Abdul Carter. But here's what I said. I have played with Abdul Carter. I've been in the locker room with him. I know how he is. He has been, as you've seen from his Twitter feed, and him basically just going Star Wars mode.
I freaking love
It's awesome. I think the fan base really enjoyed it.
Good.
And the best part is he backs it up because he is one of the greatest players ever, the most gifted players ever. It's not like he says this and then we'll go out and do nothing. Although, so there is this world where I will say this. He is injured. He is not hurt. He is playing injured. There could be a point, I just want to warn you, that he might say, I am no longer effective enough to be out here.
It'll be. I think we'll find out pretty soon.
Very quickly. I mean, I remember Ray Lewis told a story where he tore his tricep off the bone. He tried to stay in the game for 2 or 3 plays and said, I am no longer better than whoever our backup is healthy.
Right.
So that is going to be something for Abdul Carter. Now, with all that being said, Abdul Carter is that of a different breed. I am being serious when I say that. I have never met anybody like him.
Yeah.
He is feeding off of the doubt of his health, the doubt of his ability. And people said, who's doubting his ability, Landon? I said, you guys are in his brain, because by you saying, is he going to be at full health? Is he going to be able to have that full impact? He's reading all of that. And he's eating it up, and he's saying bet. And he's getting down and probably pumping out some push-ups, because that's who Abdul Carter is. The guy who said when he lost the Chuck Bednarik Award, he said he just dropped down and just broke out into push-ups until he couldn't stop anymore. That is a true story, because I know Abdul Carter. That's real. I'll just tell you this. His mindset, I'll never forget, first practice ever. We go out. It's, no one really knows Abdul yet. He was a real quiet kid over the summer. He was a summer enrollee. Go out first day of pads. And we go this drill where it's 2 offensive linemen versus a defensive lineman and a linebacker. And obviously at this time, he was a stand-up linebacker. So Abdul Carter is standing up, and we go double team, me and Juice Scruggs up to Abdul. I get Abdul, put hands on him. I get him in the dirt, pancake him. And I look at him and I say, you're not Micah Parsons, beep. And he didn't say anything. He gets up. It's whatever. Couple days later, it's called pods. We're in those pods again. And he came up and he put his helmet under my chin so hard that I literally fell to one knee. And he said, yeah, the F I am. I kid you not, that is Abdul Carter. And he did not forget that. And me and Abdul are great friends. I see him all the time. Yeah. But we still remember that and that first interaction. And by the way, Abdul, you are Micah Parsons. You're the closest thing I've ever seen to it.
Yeah.
And that is just kind of my story of Abdul, though. He is relentless, and he is, unless that thing is falling off the bone, he is going to be out there. He's going to give it his all. Should he play? Absolutely not. Will he? You bet your top dollar he will.
I have a less cool story, but I also have an Abdul Carter story. And we got to get to the break. We got to come back. This will be very quick. So I interviewed him as a recruit on this channel, on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. What you don't see is before we start rolling, he and his dad are off screen talking. And by the way, on screen, he's sitting on a bench in the living room, like a weight bench in the living room. He did workouts in the living room. But in the background, his dad is giving him a pre-interview pep talk to dominate the interview with me.
Did you get dominated?
Yes! Yeah, I made a joke. I was like, so you had like 75 tackles, 10 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss. So did you leave any stats for your teammates? Just curious, like, were there any plays for anybody else? And he's like, I wouldn't have made my plays without my teammates. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, know the tone of this interview now, so I will just be cutting all the BS out, and we're going to just be talking ball. And that's what we're going to be talking about coming on the other side when we get here to the next segment here on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, which we're going to get to this week in Penn State sports, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what might happen if Penn State wins and who they might see, and all the things that we might be talking about in terms of matchups and excitement and things like that on the other side here on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, driven by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
It's more than just football at Penn State. Here's This Week in Penn State Sports, brought to you by Bobby Rahal Lexus in Lewistown. Get ready to experience luxury like never before at Bobby Rahal Lexus of Lewistown. We are Nittany Valley's award-winning Lexus dealership at 425 Electric Avenue. Visit us on the web at BobbyRahalLexusofLewistown.com.
Before Penn State and Notre Dame kick off the college football playoff semifinal round, the rest of the Penn State sporting world is in play. The Penn State men's basketball team found themselves in snowy Champaign, Illinois last night, where they took on the Fighting Illini. They travel back to State College today as the Lady Lions are in a game of their own as we speak. Penn State is taking on the Oregon Ducks in the Bryce Jordan Center right this very second. The game should wrap up by 7 p.m. tonight, just before kickoff in Miami. After facing the Ducks, Carolyn Keeger's crew is prepared to head west for a matchup against top 5 ranked UCLA Bruins and the USC Trojans just days away. We are sending our thoughts and prayers to everyone in California right now in the wake of devastating wildfires going on across the state. The games are currently scheduled to go ahead as planned, but nothing is certain until opening tip for both matchups. Happy Valley is bustling right now as more than just the hoops teams are back in season. Both men's and women's gymnastics teams kick off their seasons this month, and the men's and women's hockey team are in season. The Penn State wrestling team is just about to kick off Big Ten play. That's This Week in Penn State Sports. We'll be back with the Tailgate Show in a moment.
Experience the difference. Into the actual football stuff. Let's talk about Abdul Carter injury update news. I'm sure it's going to be as exciting as the graphic I just put up here on the YouTube channel for everybody. Greg, what did James Franklin have to say about his star defender and his availability for tomorrow?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, James Franklin not interested in revealing anything more than he felt like he had to or wanted to at this news conference 24 hours before kickoff. And look, as we'll talk about in a minute, he was not the only head coach on this particular day that had to field a question about the health of a star player, because Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love is in a similar situation. We'll talk about what Marcus Freeman said about him momentarily. But the direct quote from James Franklin was, "We anticipate Abdul playing. He's doing everything he possibly can to play. His approach has been awesome. He's lived in the training room, but it'll be a game time decision. We'll see." And then he goes on to say that he's approached it the right way, that they're hopeful and expecting Abdul to play, but we'll see how it plays out. And so take it for what it's worth. It's a true game time decision. I think we all could have assumed that prior to this news conference, even prior to last Saturday's news conference, that they're going to do as much work as they could with him, both in State College and also here in Florida, with the trainers and the doctors and things like that, and then get to Hard Rock Stadium tomorrow, put him through some early testing, and see if it's possible at all. So I think, again, I think that the genuine part of all this is that if he can play T. Frank, he will. And whatever he can give Penn State, he will give Penn State. The question is just going to be, what can he give them? And without knowing the specifics of the injury and all of that, it's just impossible for us to sit here and speculate. I think he's going to try to play. Will he? Yeah. I think we'll have a better feeling for that during pregame warmups. But one thing I'll note, and it's important if you missed it over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, is that
can I just jump in here quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, his participation, I think, I don't want to say is guaranteed, but I feel strongly he can play. But as you pointed out, and as James Franklin talked about on Saturday, how able is he to play? What is he able to do? He can run, so he can still be on the football field. But what kind of contact can he take? And I'll get more into this into the game preview. But I think that dictates his impact on the game is, where they play him and how how the injury dictates the nature of his contact on the field. That, to me, that's the whole question about this. But I said, what's over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for people to know?
Yeah, so Penn State, as we all know, had to release a availability report 2 hours before its Big Ten games in the regular season. It actually released one before the SMU game as well, and SMU was not required to do the same by the ACC. So I don't know what mechanism transpired to allow Penn State to learn that it did not need to release one before it played Boise State, who also is not required to release one by the Mountain West Conference, but they did not do so before that game. The Big Ten was okay with it since it's not a college football playoff requirement. So Penn State, before this contest, will have the choice of whether it wants to release a pregame availability report. I think we all know the answer.
Retirement Community's 50-plus acre campus in Big Valley, PA. Award-winning residential, personal care, skilled nursing, rehab, and memory care for older adults.
You have to have an understanding of what might happen next to understand the stakes of what's happening right now. So let's have that as the framing of around the Big Ten, because we're here at the end. And we could have a Big Ten national championship game between Penn State and Ohio State. So first off, Penn State would have not played anybody all year long. They would not have played anybody through the first 2 games of the playoff. Then they beat a Notre Dame team, which you can say the same thing about. And like, oh, Notre Dame was overrated because they played the soft ACC. They didn't play any of the and then Penn State plays the 1-15 or whatever it is, and all of those James Franklin stats about his top 5 team record and his record against Ohio State and Michigan, and it's just there at the end waiting for you. That's around the Big Ten. Landon, any thoughts?
I'll give a couple of thoughts on the game itself with Texas, Ohio State. Man, Ohio State, people ask, what happened versus Michigan? How'd they fix it? Chip Kelly was stupid. That's what I'll say. Ryan Day was also stupid. They went in and they had an ego issue.
Yeah,
they said
they have for years now.
Well, they've always had an ego problem.
Yeah.
Started with Urban Meyer. Shout out Urban Meyer, worst coach. No, I was kidding. Great coach, but I just didn't like him very much. Liked him more than Brian Kelly.
Who gets a shout out? Because shout out has been good and bad, and I'm just trying to follow the rules here.
I'm going to be honest, so I'll never forget this. So I'm walking from our show that we normally do right outside the BJC, and this is when all the guys, they drive by on the golf cart. So it's Urban Meyer, Reggie Bush, all those guys. And I'm walking with my girlfriend, Sarah, and Urban Meyer's on the back of the golf cart. So he looks, and he looks at me, and Sarah's like, oh, yeah, he just recognized you. She's like, he remembers you. And I was like, hey, coach, how you doing? No, wasn't a super big fan of them, but Ohio State has always been very, very cocky. Real quick, you know what? While we're on story, this has been a good story time. I think people are enjoying it. Real quick, my greatest recruiting story ever. I kind of told this when we played Ohio State. I go up. I'm a freshman freshman in high school. I go with my best friend, who is Chase Young's little cousin. Right? Chase Young's going into his final year. It's his birthday, the spring game. He has 4.5 sacks in that game. I go in, I meet Urban Meyer. Emmett Smith was in there with his son before me. My mom goes on to sit on Emmett Smith's phone. He comes back in. He's like, I think I left my phone. And then I'm like, sorry, Mr. Smith. And we give him his phone. Talk to Urban Meyer. Didn't really enjoy it. Larry Johnson, the legendary Larry Johnson, is obviously the defensive line coach, and he's my recruiting area coach. So next thing I know, I don't get offered. We go back to Chase's house after the game. We're sitting there. He kind of knows my situation. I have all these offers. I'm a 5-star. Ohio State does not offer me. He says, they didn't offer you. I'm like, yeah, Chase, they didn't offer me, man. It's whatever. And I'm a freshman. I'm 15, and it killed me that I wasn't offered. At this point, everywhere I go, if I don't get an offer, I am in an awful mood for the rest of the week.
Right.
He goes, what? Hold on. Calls LJ, Larry Johnson. He's like, man, what the hell are you doing? You need to offer Landon, blah, blah, blah. Hangs up the phone. Next thing I know, 10 minutes later, LJ texts me, and he's like, yo, come out back. I'm at Chase Young's place. I walk around back. LJ's like, son, you have an offer from the University of Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. I shook his hand, never talked to LJ again, never went back to Ohio State. But that is how I got my offer from Ohio State. Chase Young bullied Larry Johnson. Urban Meyer didn't even know that I was offered. And Chase Young bullied Larry Johnson into offering me. So that is my great story right there of Ohio State. Saying all that to say that I think Ohio State is going to win this game very easily. They are so talented. Jeremiah Smith, the young freshman, fortunately we got to see him for another 2 years. they're going to utilize him instead of trying to run the ball. You have two injured offensive linemen.
Yes.
You're going against Mason Graham and Kenneth Walker. That was the Michigan State running back. But Kenneth Grant.
I was going to say Kenneth Murray, so I was way off.
Kenneth Grant is the one that tracked Katron Allen down from behind.
The big 78.
The big 78 Michigan's D tackle.
Yeah.
And so Ohio State just tried to run it up the middle at them. And it's like, what are you doing? That's not your game.
Yeah.
So they got humbled, but they came out against Oregon. Jeremiah Smith was talking trash and say, leave me one-on-one and you'll basically pay for it. And that they did.
Yeah.
Oregon had a bad day out there.
They decided to give the ball to their best player, and it worked.
And it worked. And Dylan Gabriel looked pedestrian, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I definitely have Ohio State in this game, as I think most do, T. Frank.
Yeah, and that's probably it all is very fitting. I summed it up before that, and I have the same expectation. So let's just get back to talking about this game, which we're going to do here in a second on the Penn State Tailgate Show, powered by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5, The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and right here, you beautiful people on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Friday in Dallas. We are not going to make predictions for that game, but we are going to make them for Penn State and Notre Dame. Again, the point spread, 1.5 points in favor of the Fighting Irish. The total's 44-45, depending on where you look. T. Frank, our staff made their picks over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com earlier this week. We got one already in the chat. It's PSU 24, Notre Dame 17 from Dave. I would expect... it was funny. I did about 10, 12 minutes with Mike Singer of our sister site, Blue and Gold, that covers Notre Dame. And we got to the point of the show where he was talking about making predictions. And he said, I'm going to just kind of guess that the way this is going to go this week is anyone who covers Penn State is going to pick Penn State. Anyone who covers Notre Dame is going to pick Notre Dame because a close game is expected. Yeah. And that's just usually what we do. And I said, Mike, I think you're 100% right. And so let me show you the predictions from not T. Frank and I, and then he and I can explain why we made the picks we did. So Ryan Snyder covers recruiting at Blue White Illustrated, has it Penn State 24, Notre Dame 20. Sean Fitz, our publisher at Blue White Illustrated, has it in Penn State 26, Notre Dame 23. And then Nate Bauer, our insider at Blue White Illustrated, has it Penn State 26, Notre Dame 20. So as you see there, we all picked Penn State, and what goes without saying that I think we all expect a close game. But T. Frank, let's get to your prediction now. You have it Penn State 31, Notre Dame 20. Notable because it's the largest point spread of any of us who made a pick on this game. Why?
Yeah, everything I said about, I think, by the way, this was different than my prediction in the article, and you can go read everybody's opinions and their thoughts of what's behind those numbers. You can go read it at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Just like I said, everything I outlined today, I think Penn State's schematic advantages in this game that they have built into their offense cause Notre Dame some problems where they will have to adjust. I don't think the same is true of the reverse. Penn State has, and this is something before I even got to all the run game stuff, Penn State has been better against man coverage because of Tyler Warren and the improvement from Trey Wallace. So they have at least two answers in the offense. I don't know that Amari Evans, people have been asking for the Amari Evans breakout game. They don't play quarters, right? So like the thing I've talked about all year long is the way that a lot of teams have dealt with Kotelnicki's shifts in motions and mania of where people line up and all the advantages he uses. One of the ways to do that is to have quarters and just like throw a safety at wherever the run is going based on the alignment. They don't do that. This is not a too high defense. So cover 3 is what they're going to run. And that's a little more predictable, a little more stable. And I think it has caused Penn State probably the most problems, but they've still been successful at at having offense against that. And back to the Amari Evans thing, he's kind of a specialist against in one or two situations. So boil it down, Penn State can make plays in the passing game. I expect a couple of big runs, and so a fast start, points, that does not favor Notre Dame.
Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community. Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home with the $1,000 lowest price guarantee with 20 locations throughout Pennsylvania. I'll be honest, I had some pregame jitters for the first time in a while, but just like a real football game, we got through the first drive, and I'm feeling good, Landon.
Take that first hit.
This is a good show.
Yeah, you take that first hit, and you're feeling good.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the nerves go away, and it's like, all right, let's play ball.
Yeah.
And no, this is a fun one, T. Frank.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go ahead and cap this one off. Send everybody home with a little prediction here.
We're here in the fourth quarter, so time's running out on the clock. We need to give you our predictions. So, Landon, as always, you get to go first. I feel like I'm going to be out here on a limb. So I'll go second, and I'll give my explanation. But what do you think is going to happen in this game? What's your score prediction?
Yeah, I'll say it'll come down to the final play. I've said that all week long. I think it's two incredibly well-coached teams heading into this game, almost identical offenses, two really strong defenses. And I think it's going to come down to a couple things, as do most games. But who wins the turnover battle? Who makes that critical mistake? And also, who doesn't capitalize? Georgia did not capitalize on anything that Notre Dame gave them. They just basically fumbled it away. No pun intended, literally, when Schuler came and stuck their running back in the hole and he fumbled it on Notre Dame's 10-yard line. Yeah. So those are the type of plays we cannot have. We must capitalize and punch it in when we need to. Who can establish that first 10-play, 7-minute touchdown drive?
Yeah.
I think the first team to do that is in a really, really good place the rest of the game. And I think it's going to be Penn State. Like I said, last play, give me 20-17. Ryan Barker, walk-off, game winner.
People are getting their money in your scenario.
Ugh.
So I had a 4-point game or something like that, and then I went through the process that I described here earlier on the show. If you're joining us here live, I feel like I found a massive schematic advantage for Penn State in this game. So talent is equal, generally, across the board. Strengths, weaknesses, injuries, health. There's two things that matter to me. What are you doing to elevate your players? And what can your players do? And what can't they do? So when I went through this situation, Notre Dame has to pivot. I don't think Penn State has to pivot. If they come out and play man coverage, I think Nick Singleton and especially Katron Allen, you get them one-on-one with a corner or you get them one-on-one in space, those guys are going to make big plays against man coverage where they're given that advantage. It has been on film. It has been on tape. Teams are avoiding doing that. So Notre Dame, if they come out and play who they are, eventually Penn State's going to rip off a big run. I think there are more paths to Penn State playing the game they've already played all year. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be consistent. If they play well, 31-20 is my expectation.
I love it. How much time we got left, T. Frank?
We got 3 minutes. Can I add one more thing?
No, go for it. We got a second.
So today I was doing some final prep, and I had been told, just don't watch the Northern Illinois game. It's, throw that out, right? But I don't listen. So I went back and I watched the game. I'm like, what went wrong here for this offense? And Riley Leonard can't read cover 3. He can't read cover 3 well. So they pivoted their offense was more down the field to start the year than it was in the last 3 weeks. So you take those away, you've played cover like Penn State. They do that. They can do that. They can pivot to do different things. They have a more diverse, digestible coverage playbook for the secondary. The opposing quarterback does not have the mental processing skills to succeed in every situation. Drew Aller does. I'm fairly confident Penn State wins this game, and the confidence level that they get to that 31 points, that's never good. I've given them too many points all year, but that's where I think they can end up in this game.
I love it, T. Frank. Here's what I'll say. Tonight, be where your feet are at. Be present in the moment. Enjoy it. You don't always get this. This is a long time coming. Who knows when we get back here? It is really hard to get here and win these games. Enjoy it. Every single player has dreamed of this moment their entire life. They are going out there and they are feeling all the nerves, all the excitement that you are as a fan. They want to bring this back to State College and to Penn State. Please enjoy the game. Thank you guys so much for spending this ride with us, and hopefully we got another one, T. Frank.
I couldn't have said it better, so I won't. What I will say is that coming up, we have the official tailgate, the official pregame show of Penn State football. If you're listening on the radio, of course, afterwards, I'll have our postgame show, the Labatt postgame show, coming up immediately following Penn State and Notre Dame. We'll break it all down, and if I'm wrong, you can yell at me, and that's how that goes. But stay tuned if you're on the radio, and if you're here on the YouTube channel, go check out Landon stuff, check out our stuff. We will be back at some point and talk about Penn State football no matter what. Until then, thank you, and you've been listening to the Penn State Football Tailgate Show.
Love you.